Blood ties are strong, but sometimes they are the very chains that drag you into danger. One choice can save a life or end it. In the shadow of the Highlands, where every secret has a price, Episode 4 is about to spill more than just the truth. The night had grown colder than the day before, the kind of cold that seeps into the bones and makes every breath a quiet ghost in the air. The hills lay dark under a restless sky, clouds rolling in like a warning. Somewhere beyond the black ridges, a storm was coming, and not just the kind carried by wind and rain. It was the kind carried by people. Rumors had begun to travel faster than the horses on the road, whispers of an oath broken. A letter found, but never meant to be read, and a name spoken in anger that could shatter the fragile peace between kin. They said family was the only thing you could trust in these lands, but even family had sharp edges. In the heart of the old house, a fire burned low. Its light danced across stone walls lined with history, shadows shifting as if the past itself wanted to speak. Somewhere upstairs, footsteps moved slow and deliberate, as though each step carried the weight of a decision yet to be made. The scent of burnt candle wax hung in the air, mixed with the faint metallic tang of blood, though no body lay in sight. Not yet. The patriarch had not slept in days. His eyes, ringed with weariness, scanned the map on the table, lines and marks, drawn in haste, showing more than just routes and borders. It showed trust and where it had been broken. His hand hovered over one name, carved in ink deeper than the rest. He traced it slowly, as if touching the word could make the man return. But the man was gone, and with him the truth about where his loyalties lay. Outside, the wind rose, rattling the shutters. In the stables, a horse kicked at its stall, sensing what the humans could not yet name. Somewhere far down the valley, a torch flickered in the night, too far to be a friend's, too near to be ignored. And in that moment, the old man knew. The storm had already arrived. It was not a matter of whether the danger would reach his door. The real question was, who would open it? The torchlight drew closer with every gust of wind, swaying like a signal between the darkness and the living. No one spoke of it yet, but in the house every ear was listening for what the eyes could not see. The youngest daughter, still awake, in her small room under the eaves, pressed her palm against the frost-glazed window. She could see movement beyond the fields, slow, deliberate, like someone who had no need to hurry because they already knew the way. Downstairs, the patriarch's eldest son had returned from a week's absence. His boots were still wet from the marsh road, his coat smelling of rain and wood smoke. He stood in the corner of the great hall, not by the fire, but in the shadow where the light did not quite reach. His eyes moved not to the door, but to his father's desk, where the letter lay, folded and sealed with a crest that did not belong to their family. Where did this come from? He asked, his voice low enough for the words to almost vanish. In the crackle of the fire, his father did not answer. Not yet. The wind shoved against the walls again, and for a brief moment, the letter shifted as if it wanted to open itself. The son's hand twitched, but he did not touch it. Some things, once opened, could not be closed again. He knew this better than most. From the kitchen came the faint clink of metal, not the sound of a plate or pot, but the quiet scrape of steel. Someone else in the house was awake and armed. It could have been the old guard who slept by the pantry door, or it could have been someone with less loyalty in their blood. The youngest daughter left her room, her bare feet silent on the wooden stairs. She did not head for her father or her brother, but for the back door. Outside, she thought she had seen something else, another light, small and quick, darting between the hedgerows. Not a torch, but a lantern, shuttered and opened with purpose. A signal, perhaps, or a warning. She stepped into the cold, the night air biting at her skin. The world outside felt too still, as if the very land was holding its breath. She moved toward the orchard, where the frost made every branch gleam like silver. The lantern light vanished, then reappeared, and she followed it deeper into the dark. Inside the house, the eldest son finally spoke again. "If you know who sent it, you know what it means?" he said, his voice harder now. The patriarch lifted his eyes from the map, meeting his son's gaze for the first time in hours. There was no anger in his face, only a sadness that seemed older than either of them. "It means," the father said slowly, "that someone we called our own is calling for our blood." The son's jaw tightened. The truth was heavier than the silence that followed it. Outside, a dog began to bark, not the wild, frantic bark of alarm, but the deep, steady bark that came when danger was already at the gate. The daughter in the orchard froze at the sound. She turned toward the house, but it was too late. The lantern light behind her went out, and in the sudden dark a voice whispered from the trees. A voice she knew. A voice she should not have been hearing at all. The voice from the trees was low, almost swallowed by the wind, yet it cut through the stillness like a blade. "You shouldn't be here," it said, calm, certain, as if the speaker already knew she would not turn back. The girl's breath formed pale clouds in the cold air. "Why?" she asked, though her voice trembled. She wanted to step closer to see his face, but the shadows between the branches were thick and unyielding. "Because," the voice replied, "you'll have to choose who you save and who you betray." A branch cracked somewhere to her right. She spun, but saw nothing. When she turned back, the space where the voice had been was empty. Only frost-covered branches swayed in the night air, and the faint scent of smoke drifted between them. From the house, the dog's bark changed. Now sharper, louder, warning of movement too close to ignore. She ran, her feet barely touching the frozen ground, her heart pounding like the drums of a march she couldn't escape. Inside, the eldest son was already moving toward the door, the letter clenched in his fist. "They're here," he said, though no one had yet seen the intruders. His father did not rise, but his eyes followed his son with a weight that made the younger man slow. "You think you know who sent that?" The patriarch said. "You think you know their reason? You don't, and when you find out, you'll wish you'd burned it before you ever read the first word." The son's jaw flexed. "If this is about family, this is about survival." The father cut in, "Ours and theirs." The door burst open before another word could be spoken. The wind drove in a spray of frost, and with it a man in a hooded coat, his face hidden. He carried no weapon in his hands, but there was one strapped to his belt, a long knife, its hilt darkened with age and use. He closed the door behind him without looking back, as though he feared nothing outside more than the eyes inside. For a moment no one moved. The only sound was the soft drip of melted frost falling from his coat to the floor. Then he reached into his sleeve and drew out a small, leather-bound book, tossing it onto the table. It landed beside the map, the sound far louder than its size should allow. The patriarch stared at it, his expression unreadable. "Where did you get this?" The hooded man pulled back his hood, but the light from the fire caught only part of his face, the rest lost in shadow. "From someone who swore they'd never speak to you again," he said. "And they told me to tell you, you've been looking in the wrong place." The eldest son stepped forward, but the man's eyes were already on the door behind him, the same door through which the daughter now stumbled. Her hair tangled, her hands trembling from the cold and from what she had heard. She looked at the hooded man, and the room seemed to shrink around her. "It's you?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. His eyes softened for a moment, and in that heartbeat, the eldest son realized something he had not known before, whatever. Danger had come to their home was not just a matter of enemies at the gate. It was already inside. Outside, the wind howled louder, as if it too knew that before the night was over, someone in this house would not see the morning. The air inside the house felt heavier now, thick with the weight of words unspoken. The hooded man had not moved since the girl's recognition of him. His gloved hands rested at his sides, still and patient, as if he knew the others would speak before he needed to. The patriarch rose slowly, his chair scraping against the stone floor. His eyes, shadowed by the firelight, moved from the man to the girl, then to his son. "Tell me," he said to the intruder, "why you've come here in the dark, and why you carry the book of my bloodline." The man's gaze flicked to the leather-bound book on the table. "Because the names inside it aren't what you think. Someone has changed them, erased the truth and replaced it with lies. And If you don't see that now, you'll choose the wrong side when the time comes? The eldest son stepped closer, his hand brushing the hilt of his knife. And what side would you have us choose? The one that lives, the man replied simply. The girl moved toward the table, her fingers hovering above the book. She had never seen it before, but she could feel its importance like a heartbeat in the room. Her father's hand shot out, stopping her before she touched it. Not yet, he said. His voice was low, but there was a tremor in it, a crack in the armor of a man who had held many secrets for too long. From somewhere outside came the faint sound of hooves, steady and approaching. The wind carried voices now, muffled but urgent. Someone was coming, and they were not coming alone. The hooded man's head turned slightly toward the door. We don't have time, he said. They're already here. The eldest son moved toward the window, peering into the dark. Through the frost and shadow, he saw the glow of more than one torch, a slow-moving line of light winding its way across the valley. It was not a small party. It was a force. The patriarch closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if gathering himself. When he opened them again, there was no hesitation. Seal the back doors, hide the book. No one touches it until I say, but the girl did not move. She was staring at the hooded man, her lips parted as if forming a question she had not yet found the courage to ask. Finally she spoke. If they're here for the book, then they already know it's here. The hooded man's jaw tightened. They don't just know, he said. They sent me to bring it out to them. The eldest son's knife was in his hand before the words had even finished leaving the man's mouth. So you led them here? He snarled. The man shook his head. No, I came here to warn you, but if I fail, they'll take it, and they'll take more than that. His eyes shifted to the girl. They'll take her. The room seemed to contract in that moment, every shadow stretching taller, every heartbeat louder. Outside, the voices were clearer now, commands barked in the night, the sound of riders dismounting. The patriarch stepped forward until he stood almost toe-to-toe with the hooded man. Then you'd better tell me, he said, what they want with her, and why her name is the only one they didn't change in that book. The man's reply was barely above a whisper. Because she's not who you think she is. Before another word could be spoken, the front door shuddered under the force of a heavy blow. The torches outside blazed brighter through the frost-streaked windows. And in the final breath before the next strike came, the only sound in the room was the turning of the key in the lock, but no one had touched it. The fire guttered. The shadows closed in. And the night, at last, had found its way inside. The door shook again, harder this time, the kind of impact that made the wooden frame groan. Somewhere upstairs, glass shattered. The girl's breath caught in her throat, but her eyes never left the hooded man. The eldest son moved toward the door, knife in one hand, the other ready to draw the bolt when his father's voice stopped him. No, the patriarch said, sharp. Enough to slice the air. Let them knock. We'll see how long their patience lasts. The hooded man stepped forward, his boots scraping against the stone floor. Patience isn't what they've brought, he said. They've brought a message, one they'd rather deliver over your graves. The girl felt the weight of every gaze in the room shift toward her. Her skin prickled with the kind of fear that comes not from what you know, but from what you've only begun to suspect. Somewhere in her memory, half buried beneath years of quiet life, a fragment of a voice whispered, "You don't belong here." She'd dismissed it as a childish thought once. Now it rang like truth. Outside, a horn sounded, a deep, hollow note that rolled across the hills and back again. It was an old call, older than the family that lived here, used only in times when blood was owed. The eldest son froze mid-step, his father's jaw clenched. And the hooded man, for the first time since entering, looked unsettled. You have until the third call, the man said. After that, they won't be asking. The fire in the hearth spat a burst of sparks, as though even it wanted to recoil from what was coming. The patriarch's eyes hardened. Then we won't give them the chance. In one swift motion, he pulled the leather-bound book from the table and pressed it into his daughter's hands. Whatever happens, you keep this. You run if you have 2 and you don't look back. The weight of the book felt unnatural, as if it held not just names and dates, but something alive, something that waited to be unleashed. Her fingers tightened around it. But what's in it? She asked. Her father's gaze softened for the briefest second. The truth about who you are, and why they'll never stop hunting you. Before she could reply, the second horn call boomed across the valley, closer now, sharper. The hooded man reached for his knife. The eldest son moved to guard the back entrance, and the girl... She took one step toward the narrow passage that led out into the orchard, the book pressed to her chest. For a moment she hesitated, glancing back at the room, at her father, her brother, and the stranger who might be her only ally, or her greatest threat. Then the third call came. The sound was so close. It rattled the window panes and sent a shiver through the stone floor. The front door's hinges screamed as something began to force its way in. The girl turned and ran. The camera of the night followed her into the dark. The torches behind her burning brighter, the voices of the pursuers cutting through the cold. She didn't know who to trust or how far she'd have to go. All she knew was that every step took her closer to answers. And deeper into danger, the screen fades to black. A single line appears. Episode 4, Danger and Secrets Await.